My name is Allie Danziger, and I'm thrilled to talk with you guys today about navigating the education to employment skills gap. I would love to start off by introducing my esteemed panelist. So Eric, let's start with you. If you don't mind taking a minute and introducing yourself.
Sure. Thanks so much, Allie. And again, pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. So Eric Hall, Associate Vice President of Career Services at Southern New Hampshire University. So I have the privilege of leading and supporting a career team that provides that comprehensive career support to both our campus and our online learners. For some context, our campus, Manchester, New Hampshire, we have a tick over 5,000 students. And then when we think about our online campus, we now have over 190,000 plus learners. So pretty extensive population really across the globe. The areas that we really focus on within career services is career advising, experiential learning, employer relations, and also thinking about how we can really partner with our academics to further infuse career into the curriculum. So again, really excited to be with you all. Been in the field now for just about 20 years. Southern New Hampshire will be 5 years in February. So thanks so much.
Fantastic, thank you. Ife.
Hi, I'm Ife Gbosi. I am a program manager at Bank of America, really driving technical change for our commercial credit lending space. But really my background, I've been at the bank for a little over 18 years in various leadership roles, hiring different roles, and also spent a stint at Prairie View A&M in their career services office last year as part of Bank of America's Leader on Loan program, really supporting the idea of corporate being part of the campus and how we can help support that.
And Cruz.
Hey, everybody. My name is Cruz Sanchez. I'm the vice president at a coding boot camp called True Coders. We are, kind of leading the tech industry in the fact that we're trying to have students come through our course, learn how to be software developers in a short period of time, and then transition them into the industry with jobs. And so, we teach people how to be software developers, web developers, be real true coders, and then help them get into the industry.
Thanks, Cruz. We've brought together an amazing panel today of individuals who each bring a very unique perspective to this topic. My name, as I mentioned, is Allie Danziger. I'm the SVP and GM of AscentUP. AscentUP is the student success platform that is part of Ascent Funding. Ascent Funding is one of the most innovative student lenders out there and consider themselves more of a success company versus a lender. And that's because we think about the entire experience from planning for school, succeeding in school, and then, planning for school, paying for school, and then succeeding post-graduation. At Ascent, we recognize that there's a huge mismatch of skills between what employers find important and what recent graduates are actually proficient in. And so we've built a training platform called AscentUP to address these important skills: communication, teamwork, equity, inclusion, professionalism, and critical thinking. The AscentUP platform is completely asynchronous. It's available to students, borrowers, and professionals 24/7, teaching the unwritten rules of the workplace to ensure success once they enter the field. We have hundreds of templates within the platform so that it's Gen Z friendly, very easy to just dive in using scripts and tools and checklists to really succeed both in getting a job as well as succeeding in the workplace and ensuring financial literacy every step of the way. So with that, I will, that's just a little context of where we're coming to from the conversation. But I would love to start off our dialogue by asking each of you, what do you think the 3 skills are that every graduate should possess in today's job market, regardless of their major? So Eric, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Allie, and really appreciated that you highlighted in the earlier slide the National Association of Colleges and Employers and the career competencies / skills there too. That's something we're very cognizant of and always thinking about how we can incorporate that into our classroom experience. So if I look off of that list and I think about organizations that we work with who are looking to hire our learners, the piece, first and foremost, is the critical thinking, and was looking not too long ago at the most recent Future of Jobs report that the World Economic Forum puts out. And you think about the need for critical thinking, analytical thinking. Those are the two skills that continue to top this survey. What it seems like year after year, that's in demand for employers. And thinking about what we can do in our world from an educational standpoint to ensure we're, again, curating those skills within our learners so that when they enter the workforce, they're very well positioned. The other piece that I step into is really the teamwork. I think that collaboration piece becomes critically important, particularly now with the shifting dynamics of the world of work. And we think about the impact the pandemic has had and how that's really accelerated quite a few changes. So I think how we conceptualize working in a team, particularly with more and more virtual work options, is going to be really important to make sure we're building that sense of community and connection. And then in our world as well, we think about the equity and inclusion consideration. Again, going back to the impact and the ability now to build out these virtual teams across the globe. I think having that understanding of how we work with individuals from different backgrounds, different experiences, and do that very well and effectively in service to our teams and also in service to those that we serve becomes critically important. So those are the three skills that really stand out to me, specifically thinking about the lens of these NACE career readiness competencies.
Thanks, Eric. That's great that you're
Sure.
familiar with them and are already incorporating them. Ife, what about you?
Well, there's going to be some duplication because I think the most important things are the most important things. So the ones that, I think about: communication. You can be as smart, you can be as talented, but if you can't speak, if you can't explain it, if you can't share, then that's really one. And then the other one that I really think about is resilience. So I think it's kind of awkward when we think about teaching it, but the ability to reconfigure, to react, to come back and say, what am I going to do differently? That skill and that ability, I think, is just super critical coming into work, but just as you continue to progress and grow in work and figure out what comes next is life. It's pretty helpful in life too. So my third one that I really thought goes back to that critical thinking, that analytical thinking, but I think you covered it really well. So that's what we think about when we think about coming into the company and what we're looking for outside of those technical skills.
With the almost 1,000 businesses that we've worked with at AscentUP and my previous company, that grit and that resiliency is the number one thing that we hear over and over again. That is both lacking as well as the key thing that they're looking for in early career professionals. So, yep. Cruz, what about you?
So, like they both said, I'm just kind of going to repeat the wheel on one of these here. It's like a broken record, but definitely critical thinking, right? Being able to think outside the box and look at things from different perspectives, because we all have different backgrounds, and that's something that I brought into the tech industry with software development. I come from a welding and a mechanic background, so I tried to relate all of my problems to my previous experiences and look at it from different angles and analyze things in different ways. And I think that is an extremely valuable thing that anybody in any industry can bring to the table. Another one that you'll probably hear me repeat throughout this conference is the ability, or maybe the idea of being a continuous learner, right? I mean, that is a skill, right? Is never stop learning, right? Because there is 110 things that I don't know about software development, and I've been doing it for 8 years, right? There's always something new for me to learn. So just being able to never quit learning. And then the last thing I would say is the ability to take a big problem and break it down into its smallest constituents, right? Just being able to look at the big picture and not get overwhelmed and say, okay, well, what are the steps that I need to build onto to get to that big picture, right? So those are the ones that I would say are critical to the industry.
That's great. So important. So Eric, I'm going to come back to you. When we were prepping for this, you shared a little bit about your role and how your role is really working with the employers and ensuring that the program is really adapting to the needs of the community and of the employer. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about your internship program, the career readiness overall at the school, and what you're doing to really ensure that your students are meeting the demands of the modern workforce.
Yeah, really appreciate the question. And, I'm realizing that's always the challenge of going first, because I love those skills that both Ife and Cruz shared. I thought those were so on point. And again, all that collective, I think, body of work is what we're trying to instill in our learners when they enter the workforce. But as far as that preparation piece, I think the value of experience, really can't be overstated enough in terms of the impact that can have in ensuring that learners are entering the workforce with the right, skill set, having, an ability to build those connections in a professional field of interest, and really making sure that they have that opportunity to gain some of that practical experience applying what they're learning in the classroom. And through some of the research that's out there through organizations like NACE and other avenues, we know that can correlate into more opportunities when they graduate. And you think about the impact it has from an economic lens in terms of starting salaries. So really the value of creating those opportunities for learners to participate in experiential learning. And I think particularly in our online space, when we think about the students that we serve and our average age being in the 30s, there's a lot of other considerations that we need to be mindful of when we think about asking someone to participate in experience. I think in your traditional college and university age student, let's say you're 18 to 21-year-old, a lot of times you're looking at that summer in between your junior and senior year, usually 8 to 12 weeks. And what we found is oftentimes it's just not feasible based on demands of time, location, financial, a lot of responsibilities that are on the table. So I think for the internship team, is really thinking about how we can be creative in creating more flexible and agile opportunities for our students to gain that experience. So we do have some programs that require an internship. We have a lot of students who are simply raising their hand and expressing an interest in pursuing these opportunities. And again, I think with the pandemic, not that we weren't already exploring sort of more remote experiences, but that really allowed us to lean into that a bit more intentionally and how we can create some of these wonderful opportunities. So I mentioned we have a team that's doing a lot of close work with our academic faculty members and leaders on, not only infusing the career competencies into the curriculum and some of that content, but also helping to curate these experiences. And we've really focused on experiential learning challenges, which offer alternatives to a traditional internship. So quickly just wanted to share, I think probably our best example we have is a program called HEART, which stands for Higher Education and Real World Training. And that's really serving to help students build that bridge between their coursework and real world challenges that are experienced by organizations in the field. Started off in the healthcare space, but has migrated into other industries as well. And it's all completed entirely online in our learning management system and AscentUP Connect, which is a communication tool that we have. Throughout the process, they're partnering both with our academic and career teams, who are in turn working with companies in various industries to help identify some of those wicked problems that they're trying to solve. And students are assigned to a team tasked with developing and presenting different solutions to these real world problems being faced by that respective company. And really allows those students, I think, to apply critical thinking skills that we talked about, problem solving, collaboration, all while networking with these organizational representatives and their peers through the lens of mentorship with an assigned faculty. And at the conclusion, learners are given a digital badge, which is sort of that credential that they can go and then apply to their resume, to their LinkedIn profile, kind of as a showcase of their work. So I think it's continuing to try to be innovative in that space, recognizing the power of this experience and the opportunities that it builds. So we're continuing, I think, to explore possibilities, and those organizational partners who work closely with us are really critical in helping create these opportunities for students.
Eric, that's just so important to continue to innovate in the way that you're providing these types of opportunities and education and experiences to your students. We have some representatives from other universities here and on the webinar, and it's so inspirational. So thanks for sharing that.
Sure, thanks.
Ife, going to turn it over to you. So from the perspective of a major banking institution, you mentioned what some of those skills are that are so important to you. How do you really figure out how to discern those in new hires? And this is also a question that came in into the channel. Like how do you interview for resiliency or grit? And then if you think about like your PPAMU experience, like how do you teach people how to explain that they actually have that resiliency or grit, or how can you?
Yeah, and it's tough because I mean, interviews are one conversation. So how do you make the most of this really important conversation? So I think it's really in the experiences you had and in how you tell your story. So it goes back to that verbal communication. It goes back to that ability. I'm going to kind of weave PV and Bank of America together, but when we're talking through interviewing at Prairie View, we talked a lot about telling the STAR method, and it's kind of basic, but when you go through and you say, this is the situation, this is what I was tasked with, this is the action that I took, and here's the result, you have such an opportunity to tell some really creative stories about your own background, creative stories. Working with students, they'd say, well, I don't really have experience, but I have been in Boy Scouts. Okay, tell me more about, you don't get to be an Eagle Scout without some really interesting experiences, without some really interesting projects. What have you, so I think it's really learning, appreciating the breadth of your experience. Sometimes it may not be a traditional internship. You may be creative. I'd have students who are like, well, I'm in technology, but I have a part-time job at retail. Well, you're dealing with people, you're interacting. Talk about how you worked through a difficult customer interaction. What did you create? So it really is really thinking through your experience, being prepared, and thinking through, I really stress life experience. Sometimes you don't have quote unquote work experience, but if you're in the classes and you have the education and you have the life experience, it's marrying those together and really that narrative that you tell there. So yeah, that's kind of how, how we look for it when we're interviewing, when we're talking to students, we're talking about, tell us about a time. I think that you kind of roll your eyes at those interview questions, but they really are an opportunity to showcase who you are and your breadth of skills and your different your background. So tell us about a time. It's more useful than I think we think about in that interview process.
Yeah. Well, and just to like continue in this, do you think employers need to really change the way that they're interviewing? Because if we're all out there saying, oh, grit and critical thinking and these NACE core competencies are the important things, do we need to change the way that we're looking at resumes and the way that we are hiring based off of, maybe skills versus degrees or different interview questions to really test for that? Or maybe it's the same questions we've always been asking of, tell me about a time, but should we be listening for different things?
I definitely agree it's listening. And I do think there is some creativity in, I just recently attended Afrotech. And so the way that we interviewed and spoke to people at Afrotech, like it wasn't your typical, like they weren't in a suit. It wasn't. So I think that employers understand that you have to kind of go about it differently. You can't just sit in your office and wait for the grades. You have to be a little bit more creative. So I mean, at PV, we worked with employers who did competitions. They would sponsor a competition within our innovation space, and we'd have the technology, the IT students put together some presentations. So was that a traditional interview? No, but definitely there were internships that come out of it. So I do think employers are doing, there's still work to be done, but I think that like it's all of the above. Like, yes, we're going to interview, but also how else can we get involved with students? How else can we get involved with talent? And how else can we think about how they can show us who they are and what they're doing?
Great. All right, Cruz, I'm going to turn it over to you now. So as you're in a seat where you graduated from a boot camp and then now are working for that boot camp. So I'd love to hear about that transition as a whole. Like what were some of the surprises or challenges or just things that you wish you had known when making that transition? And then how do you apply that experience and that learning to now your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So so I did come through the course back in 2018, and I even used Ascent to help fund that experience. So thank you guys for that. Wouldn't be here without that. So, but yeah. So one of the biggest things that I learned, which you wouldn't guess from talking to me day to day, but I'm actually pretty introverted. I don't really like interacting very much with people. But that is one of the biggest, another one of those most critical things is communication and being able to talk and collaborate with other people and classmates, coworkers, whatever the situation may be, just being able to work with other people to achieve a common goal. that is, it's invaluable, right? So that is one of the things that when we have classes and we're teaching students that come in, and you'll always have one or two that are super extroverted and they want to lead the class, and they're, that type A personality, they want to get after it. And then you have the other ones that are a bit more reserved. You kind of have to talk them through and say, hey, it's perfectly fine being that way. You're introverted, you don't want to interact, but it is critical. They're gonna be judging this in your interview if you're quiet, if you're reserved, if you're not, going out of your way to explain things, maybe a project that you worked on, something like that. If you're not able to communicate those things, then you may get overlooked when you really shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And that's a lot of what we do in our coaching and training is not just saying like, this is the way that you have to do it, but also giving the why behind it of like how you will be perceived if you do something this way or if you do something another way, so that they're not just being told like, here's this crazy, overwhelming steps of all the things I have to remember, but we're really focusing on the learning of like why these different skills are important and whatnot. So it's great that you're able to do that like from your own real world experience, which is great. Eric and Ife, I'm going to turn it to you guys now. Like, so based off of Cruz's answer, what are some things that you learned, I mean, going back to when you entered the workforce, that you didn't expect, that were just surprises that you kind of wish you had known somehow before?
I'll go.
If you go first.
There's a few things, but kind of, talking to our Cruz, networking. So I think that, no one really teaches you that you're going like, and it's such a broad, it means so many things. It means going to mixers that you don't really want to go to, but it also means just having conversations and picking up the phone with people, or, grabbing lunch with people. And so it's taken me a while to get to understanding that, like, it's just important to know the people that you're working with across your company, outside of your company, just networking. I don't think that we really teach the importance of networking to get stuff done when you need things, but also when you don't need things. So I would say, and then the second piece, I don't know, I think I've had it, but I don't think we talk about it. And someone mentioned it a little earlier, curiosity and that growth mind. Like a lot of the roles that I've had or the conversation, I say I'm just nosy. Like, how does that work? What is that? Tell me more about that. And it served me really well because I'll say, well, okay, well, I don't really know what I could do there, but do you have something that I could do? How can I help? Teach me more about that. And so I think like just being a curious person, I had it because, like I said, I'm nosy, but I don't think we talk about its importance in your career and how it can really, really help you go places.
That's so deep. Eric, yeah, what about you?
Sure. And Ife, I love what you shared about curiosity, and I was going to actually lean into the networking space as well. And maybe the piece that I'd add is being proactive in building your network. So I think sometimes when we get started at a new organization and we're trying to find our footing, you're hoping that opportunities will come to you. And I think that ties back into that curiosity piece. But I think when we talk about unearthing opportunity, really leveraging your network is going to come into play significantly. And I think about my own career and where I've been able to land. The majority of that was driven through a network. And I don't think I did that very well at the beginning. And that was certainly a learned skill. So I think as you seek out those mentors and even learning about their journey, but how they've been able to build out their own connections becomes critically important. The other piece too, and certainly I've had many opportunities in this space of failing or making a mistake, is to not look at that as a setback, but really look at that as an opportunity. And I think that's something we're really trying to curate at Southern New Hampshire University, where how can we really step into that learning culture, right? Have that growth mindset, again, as Ife said, and really understand, what went wrong. Not everything's going to go according to plan, but then how can we use that to get even better? And what can we do differently? And what did we learn? And I think that's incredibly valuable when you step into an interview space and you're able to really draw upon some of those situations where things didn't go according to plan, because that taps into that resilience, that grit piece that can be hard to demonstrate in some ways. But I think having some of those examples where, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows at the end, there were some experiences that really, really applied a bit of pressure and maybe didn't turn out as you had hoped. So those are a couple of things that stand out to me.
Yeah, that's really great. So one thing that we do to overcome this like growth mentality or imposter syndrome, and this is something that I do personally, and so I've just like spread the message, and so I'll use this as an opportunity to do it as well. I like to write down when things feel really hard, or put it in like an email folder when something just feels challenging. Because what's amazing is that like in a couple of weeks, that won't feel challenging because I will have overcome that or done it, and then can come back to that and be like, oh yeah, remember when that felt hard? Well, I did it, and now I'm tasked with doing this thing, whatever this thing is again, and now it's pretty easy. And so that like really helps, like having that process and having that folder of putting things in. It kind of also like separates it from your brain when you have that failure or setback or difficult situation, to then like also remind yourself that you are growing from each of those moments. And so I always encourage my teams to do that, and it's something that we teach in the platform too, to really help overcome that. So we got a question that's actually really relevant to NACE as that ended up coming up, that I do want to ask all of you guys. So the question is, in reference to the NACE career readiness competencies, they say, can employers expect a certain level of professionalism from recent college grads? And I'm going to reword it a little bit reframe it a bit of like, what should we generally be expecting from recent grads? If you're hiring and you worked within a school, Eric, you're in the school, Cruz, you're in the school. So I would just love to hear everyone's perspective of like, what is a realistic expectation for graduates today? Whoever is ready to go first, just jump right in, and then we'll round robin it.
I feel like my answer is going to be so long. You're going to be like, I need another seminar, because the word professionalism it means so much, and it's so interpretive. So as an employer, I mean, I work at a bank. It doesn't get stuffier than a bank. Like, we're very, but also being at Prairie View A&M and HBCU, a lot of our students were first-time college like their first generation. So there's a lot that, when you think of professionalism, like that word and what it means is so complicated that I have a lot of grace, and I may have more grace than people in a lot of corporate America. But I think that like oftentimes when you get to know a person, you lose sight, that becomes less important. So that is my answer. I don't know that every single one of my colleagues at the bank feels the same way, but I think that people come with a lot. And so I really value taking the time to understand. And so one of the things we did at PV actually is we built a career closet, and we have professional clothes. And at the career fair, we're sending people back and we're saying, hey, go get something from the closet. I'm really trying to enable that professionalism but we can't get to every kid every single time. And so employers, just have grace, because people have stories. So that's my answer. I don't know if I really answer. So I guess my answer is yes, you should. But if you don't, I would say really don't dismiss that person right away, and give them a chance, because you don't know what you'll find and why they may have ended up in front of you that way. That's my long answer.
That's a great answer.
Okay.
That's great. Cruz, would you be willing to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I believe, as a human species, we all have expectations, right? We have expectations of everything. And sometimes you just have to overlook those, right? I mean, we never know. I mean, this could be someone's very first interview in their entire life, right? And they might be an excellent candidate. They might be, a top-notch developer or top-notch XYZ. And if we come into an interview with an expectation of the prime model candidate, we may overlook someone who is super, the perfect fit, but maybe they just have one or two things that didn't check your box that, you're going to miss out on because we didn't, we had this pre-contrived notion of what we expect to have in an interview. I've been in a bunch of interviews, and I've been on the other side interviewing, and it's an interesting place to be on either side. To be honest with you, it is more fun on the interviewing side, I will say that. But everyone's coming from a different background. Like I said, it could be the first person, the first experience they've had, and hopefully they've done practice interviews, right? But it's one of those things where you don't know someone's true story, so just have an open mind coming into it. listen to what they have to say. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's great. Yeah, thanks. And Eric, what about you? What kind of perspective can you add to this?
Sure. And again, I'll just mention, both what Cruz and Ife shared, I think was again, so spot on when it comes to that term professionalism and how, more subjective that can be. And I know that's one of the career readiness competencies, and there's an associated definition with that. But I think we do need to take a step back and kind of look at it in the broader context. So I know for us, when we get back to Ife, what you said around the grace piece, right? Employers have a bit of grace there. I think that's part of the work that we're doing with our organizational partners, is creating that understanding of the population that we serve, so they have a better awareness and sense of the students that they're going to be engaging with if they're coming to us, to recruit for their positions. So we've also tried to really lean on our employers and our alumni to come in and approach it more from an educational lens rather than a recruiting lens, because I think it's a lot of value in certainly hearing from particularly our alumni who, just not too long ago were in a similar situation in our students' shoes, and can really speak to some of those concepts around professionalism and some of the pressure that may have been a part of that. On campus, we have a professional communication and careers course that all of our second year students are required to take. So I think there's a piece where we have that opportunity to get in front of groups and talk about, what does professionalism mean? And let's talk about, we mentioned communication, and what does that mean when you put those two together? And what do we need to be mindful of when we think about the background and experiences of everybody we serve? So that's such an important consideration. Our president says this quite often, that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. So when I think about an individual coming in for an interview, not knowing their story, having not walked in their shoes, taking the time as an interviewer to really understand that perspective becomes critically important. And is there an opportunity for this individual who, has incredible talent and now just needs an outlet for that? I think is so important. And, professionalism, I think, as we work, and we talked about building out a mentorship and some of the networking considerations, those are things that you can continue to develop over time. So I think we certainly try to have those discussions, but set, expectations with organizations that are working with us based on the population of learners that we serve. And that education piece is really a two-way street.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I speak to that all the time, of like how much we all need to take ownership of, yes, being mindful of what professionalism means, but then also teaching professionalism. Because if you don't have the opportunity to have learned some of those professional habits at an early age, you come into the workforce and you're just immediately at a disadvantage. And so it's important for us to all work towards teaching those important skills. And one thing that I often tell employers, in addition to just like the varying expectations around professionalism, is taking employers and managers actually taking the time to explain your expectations. So if an individual is not performing, and I'm not talking about in an interview necessarily, but there's a lot of prep that goes into interviews and mock interviews and practicing for that. So if they make it in and then they don't meet your professionalism expectations, got to be clear about it. Being passive aggressive about that and just dismissing their behavior as Gen Z or whatever it is that it might be, it puts as much of that blame on you, in my opinion. And so it's important to take some ownership there and to lay out your expectations. If they don't meet those expectations, give them the feedback on that in a really direct way. And then you can decide what you need to do from there if they're not taking the feedback properly. But if you don't know what professionalism is, and you're in the workforce, and especially if you're like in a remote environment, and you can't look to the colleague sitting next to you and see that what they're doing is professional or not professional, then that's going to, you don't have the chance to learn as much as we used to be able to. So we've all got to take that responsibility and work together. I just froze. Hopefully you guys could all hear me. Give me a thumbs up if we're good. Okay, sounds good. Thanks. Okay, so we keep getting questions. So I'm going to go off script here to make sure that we really are addressing what our audience is looking for here. This question is, I work with work study students, some of whom have never had a job before, and some of them work with us 1 to 4 years and then enter the workforce beyond the university. I would love to know some tips that you think are most essential for student employee training them to be employees after the workforce, after school. So for fellow educators, is the way that I'm reading this, for fellow educators, like what are some things, and Eric, if you want to speak to this, like that we can be doing in school to teach them how to be exceptional employees?
Yeah, it's a great question, and our office, also supports work study students. So I think we're constantly trying to think about what is a quality experience for these individuals. And I think the biggest piece for me, when we think about an internship, let's say, we have certain expectations of what that experience should be, from a quality lens, and we've applied that very similar to our work study opportunities, our student employment opportunities. So I think first and foremost, it's having regular meetings with a supervisor so you can provide some of that feedback and help that individual develop and grow. I think sometimes, you may just be given a list of more, let's say, administrative tasks as a student employee that you're just kind of checking those boxes. And I know we all get busy, but I think from a supervisor lens, it's really important that we take a critical interest in their development. So that becomes really, really crucial. And I think being very upfront about these are the learning outcomes that you can expect in participating in this opportunity. And that way it helps that student, I think, translate that even more effectively in a space like an interview, in a resume. And I think that piece has been missed in the past, where we have not done a good job of really explaining these are the skills that you'll gain. This is what that experience will mean for you and how it translates or ties back. Again, I'll use the NACE competencies as an example. So I think that's really a key consideration as well. There's some great resources out there. There's some book Student Employment as a High Impact Practice that has certainly given us some good guiding principles about what those experiences should be. But really, first and foremost, I think it's just investing the right amount of time and treating that as an actual professional experience and approaching it the same way we would as an internship or a full-time position.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Anyone else have any perspective there? If you from anything at PVMU, anything that you think the school can be doing to mitigate employability?
Yeah, I'm not sure what access is like, but one of the things that we're still working on at PV was the ampersand now AscentUP platform and offering it. I know, I was like, I don't know if we should.
I did not ask her to say that.
I was like, and I'm not sure if everybody has access to it. So sorry if I'm making a mess, but it was really great. And it was something we were talking about embedding into our student employee training from the HR perspective. So when they became a student employee, they would go through that training and just kind of get the how to write an email so that we could hold them to a very professional standard, even as student employees. Because I think one of the things that we tend to do is we have grace for our student employees because we know they have class, and so I saw that sometimes we're a little bit lax on if you were a true employee versus a student employee. And so kind of setting the standard that like you're held to similar practices. And so, yeah, I'm not sure. Hopefully I did not get us in trouble and it's a big mess, but I really like the AscentUP platform as something to provide and have student employees go through as well.
Thank you. I will explain. So what AscentUP, it's a software platform, and we work with employers as well as with universities and career education institutions to teach these unwritten rules. Like all of these things we've been talking about, that's what we teach in an asynchronous way. And we work with career services departments often, especially for those like internship programs or whatnot, to help elevate the program and teach some of the skills. It allows the professors, it allows the faculty to really focus on like the coaching, the relationship with the students. When it comes to resume, as an example, like we have a 15-minute course, it teaches all the basics of a resume, and it's such good prep before coming to a resume prep workshop, right? And then you can actually like spend your 30 minutes, or your team can spend their 30 minutes with the individual, not going over the basics, but actually working on the resume. When it comes to them actually then going into the field and asking, actually working in an internship, they then come in with much better preparation. They know how to talk to their managers. They know how to attend a meeting. They know how to, ask for clarification on a project. And then they show up as that much more professional. Those are some of the terms. We call it durable skills that we're teaching in the platform. And so they show up just that much better. It's then a better reflection, hopefully, on the school. Because the employers, the people that are hiring, the people that are maybe alumni that are there recruiting, they're that much more proud to be hiring from the school. So thanks for setting me up for that, Ife. I appreciate it. With just a couple of minutes left, we'll do one last round robin before we open it up for questions. If anyone has just anything else, like what else have we not talked about that I know you're all very passionate about this space that you want the audience here to hear. We've got employers, we have educators, and we have hiring managers from across the board. Cruz, I'll start with you.
Excellent. Well, can I go second?
Or nothing. Yeah, sure. Eric, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm thinking myself because I know we were able to touch upon quite a few topics. But I do think it's when we look at that partnership between education and industry, that's going to continue to be so essential when we think about the successful preparation of graduates, and thinking about the work that we do at Southern New Hampshire University, specifically in the career services team. We wouldn't be able to accomplish what we do without that partnership. So I think continuing to drive conversations between both industry and academia is going to be really integral. That certainly has impacted and shaped our programs to a point now where we have our career engagement team part of our program redesign conversations. So we're being very thoughtful in capturing that voice of the employer and trying to capture some of those competencies as learning outcomes, right? So I think that's going to continue to be critically important. And I think the skills that we've all talked about today, and just really being mindful of what opportunities do we have, what responsibility do we have from an educational lens to ensure that we're creating opportunities for development in those spaces.
Thanks. And we are going to continue having these webinars as a way to keep bridging the gap, to keep having these conversations between such important stakeholders in this key transition for millions of learners every year. Ife, any final thoughts from you?
I mean, Eric and I are just on the same page on a lot of things, because we touched on it, but my experience at Prairie View A&M was Bank of America paying my salary for me to work at Prairie View as really part of that on-campus corporate connection. And a big part of the work that I did there was then going out to other companies, other businesses in the Houston area and saying, how do you want to get involved? Or really taking incoming conversations and saying, that's really interesting that you want to hire 5 interns. It would also be great if you would host 20 students just to come to your office and see your operations and bring them. So really just continuing to foster and grow those partnerships. So if you're on here from an education perspective, think about employers and be creative in how you can engage with those employers. And employers the same, like there are ways, just simply, it was so interesting when students were like, oh, I didn't know that was a job. Simply exposing them to different workplaces and how things work. I'm like, it's an office, but they were like, I didn't know you could do that there. And I didn't know I could do that there. And that's so important. So partnerships are critical for all of us. And it's beneficial for the students, but also for the corporations, for the organizations that are welcoming them. So that's my final plug is partner. It's really fun and it's great for all of us.
Great. Well, Cruz, I'll give you the floor if you want it. If not, all good. We're right at time, so we're good to wrap things up. If anyone has any final questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. Cruz, I will hand it to you just in case. I don't want to speak over you. If you want to say anything final, yeah.
I'll add a couple things in closing there. It's just, as employers, we all have our kind of going back to those expectations of our ideal candidates, or they have to check all of these boxes, and there is a large number of entry level candidates coming into the workforce every single year. So I think it would be beneficial for us to be mindful of, maybe they don't check 10 out of 10 boxes, maybe they check 5 out of 10 boxes, right? But we could be very well losing out on candidates that are amazing. They are coachable, they are willing to learn, they will put in the extra time, but we miss out on them because they're not that senior level or mid-level, whatever it is we're looking for. They're more junior level, and sometimes you can't have any wiggle room, but on a lot of things I feel like we probably really could have some wiggle room there. So I think just coming into it with an open mind, be open to having maybe hire 2 entry levels or 2 junior levels instead of 1 senior level, right? Because maybe they can do the same workload, but they might just need a little bit of extra coaching for someone more senior than them. I think that's kind of where I'm at on that topic.
Yeah, that's huge. Thanks. Well, thanks everyone so much. We just got a final question. Yeah, we're good. Really appreciate everyone's participation. The questions were great. As I'm looking over my notes, your questions like just exactly were the questions that we were going to be asking. So I'm glad we were able to make this relevant to the topics that are top of mind to you all. Eric, Cruz, Ife, thank you so much for your participation and your honesty and transparency through this exciting conversation. We will be sending out the recording afterwards. And again, thank you all so much for your time today.
Thanks for bringing us together. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
For sure.
It was fun.
Thanks all.
Yeah, sure was.
Bye-bye.
Take care.